Software Engineering Chapter 14. The objectives of this discussion is to learn about test policy, test strategy, test planning, test scenario definition, test case definition, and lastly, test data definition. So first, let me define what is planning. Planning is the act or process of making a plan to achieve or do something. It is the most important phase in project or product lifecycle. While testing is a planned activity happening at several instances during software development lifecycle. So there are 6 testing activities, namely test policy, test strategy, test planning, test scenario definition, test cases definition, and test data definition. So let me tackle first the test policy. Test policy is generally defined at the organizational level, product family level, for product company depending upon the risks associated with it, type of product, type of final users. In case of projects, test policy is driven by the customer or user for a given project. Test policy differs from product organization and project organization. In terms of product organization, the entire product is owned by the organization and it is responsible for any problem faced by the final user while using the product. And in terms of project organization, it offers development services to customer but does not own the product. The content of test policy in general. In writing a test policy, it must have an introduction. Introduction of test policy defines the background information for establishing the test policy in the organization. Testing policy details the views and opinions of senior management about testing activities in the organization. Testing policy may be to define and document the way testing would be viewed by the organization. Testing is an important activity to meet customer expectations. And in writing a test policy, it must have scope. Scope of testing policy defines the areas or circumstances where the test policy would be applicable, as well as defines some cases where it will not be applicable. Scope statement helps in clarifying the intents and may include the specific information if the situation demands so. Scope statement may be that this test policy is applicable for all in-house development projects as well as projects where customers do not specify any specific test policy. Test policy must also contain testing organization and reporting. Testing organization defines the overall structure of testing as a function and locating testing functions in the organizational structure. Example may be, test manager will be the overall in charge of test team and will directly report to Chief Executive Officer of an organization. In writing also the test policy, it must also include the skills or the training that the technical team passed through. Testers need training to enhance their skills, understand new concepts of testing, and face the changing scenarios in technological or domain field. One of the policy decisions may be each tester will be given minimum 3 days of training related to testing per year. The second test activity is test strategy. Test strategy is defined for individual project or product family, as the case may be. Test strategy defines the expectations of users and risks associated with usage of such software. Strategy document tries to identify the actions associated with the implementation of the policy. In writing test strategy, it must have an introduction. Introduction of test strategy defines the type of application under testing. It is for a project or for the content of product released or for a product development and the challenges expected for testing it. It must also have a scope, which is defined as the circumstances where this strategy will be applicable or not applicable as the case may be. The responsibility and authority must also be indicated, which defines the authorities of test manager, test leads, and test team members and their responsibilities in inter-software development lifecycle. And also, the approach must also be indicated. Approach is the most important part of test strategy, which defines the methodology used in testing. The content of test strategy in general. Risk analysis. Every automation effort is linked with risk. Risk may be either that the defects present in the product are not found, or the defects found may not be defects in reality. Test objectives. Definition of critical success factors for the project as well as for testing are covered by test objective definition. The limitation of testing must also be indicated, which defined as the testing cannot cover all the aspects of system including all features and attributes. So the third test activity is test planning. Test planning is defined for individual project or product at different stages. Sometimes there is a master test plan covering all the life cycle verification and validation activities, and there may be several child plans to represent activities at different stages. In writing a test plan, it must answer the following questions. First, what is being tested? Second, what is the pass or fail criteria for each test as well as the overall test plan for entire product or project? Third, when each test occurs, and what hardware and software environment is required for performing tests defined as per test plan. Fifth, what features must be tested or what features will not be tested as defined in the scope of test plan. And lastly, what are the responsibilities of individuals and organizations involved in the project? The fourth test activities is the test scenario definition. Test scenario definition are defined for individual project or product at different stages, such as unit testing, integration testing, interface testing, and system testing. The fifth test activity is the test cases definition. Test cases are defined for individual project or product at different stages of development and testing. Theoretically, test case is a subset of scenario. And the last test activity is the test data definition. Test data is defined or captured for individual project or product at different stages of development and testing. So that is the end of my discussion. Thank you.